Well, it's astonishing, isn't it? You've got Victorian-era delivery mechanisms with
Great.
21st
Yes.
century antenna
Yes.
arrays,
That's
listening
great.
to everything we say and do, mapping out our military installations,
Oh.
going over them time, and we're watching them. We're watching them do this. We finally started to shoot them down. They're everywhere. They're probably coming from China and or North Korea. The two countries are extremely close, not just geographically, but they're reliant on one another. Surely North Korea is reliant on China, and we haven't been paying attention. This has been going on for a long, long time. You remember what? Last week, was it? The week before?
Yeah.
The balloon trip went all the way across the United States, and we finally knocked it down off the coast of North Carolina or South Carolina. Well, there are two things about this. The first is they're difficult to detect because they have a very low radar signature, and they've got no infrared signature. So frequently, the only time you can see them is if people on the ground see them. The second thing is that the last three that were shot down were very much different than the big balloon. The big balloon clearly was from China. They even admitted it was Chinese. It had the antenna array and all the rest of that stuff. The rest of them, we probably know about as much as the government does at the moment, while the government's trying to sift through the wreckage and debris to figure out what those things are all about. They're almost undoubtedly not from aliens. I mean, my family were aliens a generation or so ago. Not from them, I can tell you that. But they're probably from people who don't like us very much. And China's probably the origin of these things, Joe.
Yeah, Colonel, NORAD. I mean, it's NORAD, North American Command. How are they not seeing these things? And let me just go, just as an aside, if I can, Colonel. You said that you can't pick them up on infrared because there's no heat. They're not emanating any heat. Is that why you can't see them in that regard?
Yeah, I mean they do. They're steerable, most of them. These have been steerable, which means that they do burn fuel. Some of them. And there is some heat coming out of them, but not enough to be detected either from satellites or on the ground. And balloons and these very small objects, the cylindrical one that was shot down the other day, these things have a very, very low radar signature, so they're very difficult to pick up, which explains why the Chinese are using them.
Wow, you're so funny. Victorian era. It's like what they are. They're taking something from the Victorian era.
80 days, It's great.
Where's David Niven when you need him? I know. It's
exactly
like,
right.
What? And 20,000 feet over Lake Huron. And the North American Aerospace Defense, NORAD or U.S. Northcom, they don't pick this up. Jack, we just don't feel good about anything. Is there anybody in charge? A rhetorical question, Colonel Jacobs. But this seems to be...
Well, I think that deserves an answer, rhetorical or not. It would appear that up until now, while NORAD was in charge, they weren't paying a whole lot of attention to it. Our problem is that we haven't been doing a very good job of picking this stuff up before it gets to our shores. We should be doing that, and we haven't been doing that. But one hopes that NORAD's going to redouble its efforts to do that. NORAD's a joint and combined venture with Canada. You would expect that all that hardware, software, and military minds from two countries could figure out what the heck's going on. I think they're probably being yelled at now by everybody in the public that they haven't been doing their job. My guess is they'll start working harder at it.
I hope so. And Colonel Jacobs, we live in Jersey, but even further out from where we're from, in beautiful New Jersey, they have those balloons. You'll see a balloon, off of Route 78. You see these big balloons. They're not moving so fast, Colonel. They're not. I mean, it looks like I could throw something at it, God forbid, and knock it down. I mean, they don't have a great rate of speed. These balloons, correct, Colonel?
Correct, and you just raised a very significant point, and one of the main reasons why they're being used. Unlike airplanes or even drones, some of which can go up for days, these things can stay aloft forever. They don't, and they're guided.
Right.
they can linger over a position, map out most of the people I talk to, and I agree with them, are saying that they're hanging out over our military installations because they want to find out. They want to get a better view of what our military capabilities are, and that's probably why they're doing it. But the ones with these intelligence communications arrays, like the big balloon, they can actually listen to phone conversations, electronic signatures coming from the ground, and so on.
Yeah.
But that's why they use these things. They're cheap.
Yeah.
And they can hang out for a long, long time, Joe.
And you think North Korea may have a hand in this? You said, Colonel, huh?
Well, the North Koreans are a parasitic state on China. China and North Korea extremely close. Don't forget that some nuclear technology has been already passed to people who hate us, and it came from North Korea. There's no doubt in most people's minds that North Korea and China are working closely because they view the United States as a common enemy. I think it's a fair conclusion that North Korea may be involved in all of this.
This is so scary. Colonel, what do we do? Because we're talking to Dr. Rebecca Grant, and I always say, where do you go from here? And she had mentioned and that we go to Taiwan, that we show up with all new defense systems going into Taiwan so that it doesn't turn into a Ukraine situation. Is that too much? Is that too much in China's face, do you think?
No, I don't think so. We've already showed up there. It's one of the reasons they get exercised about our relationship with Taiwan is because we show up there. There's no doubt in my mind that what we need to do is show up more frequently and in greater numbers.
Yeah.
So there's no mistake whatsoever. I mean, just saying we're going to defend it doesn't say as much as what we did, for example, in the Philippines, where we agreed that we were going to reestablish bases there so that we can defend our interests in the Western Pacific. There's one more thing we could do that we have only started to do, but we need to be really serious about, and that is to put economic sanctions on specific entities inside China.
Yes.
That's where they get their juice, man. So that's what we need to do, and we haven't done much of it yet. But if this persists, I think the government ought to lower the boom on Chinese economic interests, and I think we might be able to get some positive response from them.
Jack, great point. That's exactly what we should do, because what about from the virus alone? Not to mention now they're flying balloons. No one's in charge. Colonel, thank you so much for your expertise. Keep us posted, my dear friend, because this is something that is unsettling. And do you think is something worse going to happen? I hate to say that on the radio, Jack, because everybody's listening, and I don't want to be inflammatory here. But as a military man, I mean, is this a precursor, God forbid, of things to come, sir?
No, I don't think so. But it is a bigger problem than we realize or have thought about, because these balloons emanate from the People's Liberation Army. To the extent that President Xi says, I think it's a great idea, go ahead and do that, then I think it's easier to deal with. If there's some schism between Xi on the one hand, the political people on the one hand, and the PLA, the military people on the other, then there are real problems inside China, and an unstable China is not what we're looking for. More dangerous even than a internally strong China. So we got to sort out where this stuff is coming from, who's responsible for it, and act accordingly. And we better do it soon, whether it's a unified activity by the Chinese government or it demonstrates a schism inside the Chinese government, which in my view is much more dangerous.
Numbers are still coming in. The death toll from that earthquake in Turkey and Syria has reached at least 36,000, and the search to save people. The survivors still under the rubble continues, and the conditions there are so frigid right now. When you hear about all these things, you think of, what can I do? How can I help? Well, you know what? Brian Ingram with Purpose Driven Restaurants decided to hop on a plane and help out, and he is the subject of our Soccer Salute. Joining us now on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline is Brian Ingram. He owns restaurants like Apostle and Hope Breakfast Bar. Good morning, Brian. You were talking to you. You're in Turkey right now. Tell us what you're doing and how this effort is going.
Yeah, so we got into the country 2 days ago, and we've been just shopping really for 2 days, trying to just logistically get our heads around the sheer number of people that we're going to be feeding on a daily basis. We've had to wait for credentials and all of that to even get into some of these disaster areas. So Inskirdan, I'm sure I said that completely wrong, but that's one of the villages that we're going into. We had to wait for the governor to let us know that it was okay to come in, and they told us to plan on 500 people for each feeding, so 3 times a day, trying to feed about 1,500 people a day, 1,500 meals a day, 500 at a clip. So we're just trying to get our head around that, from having a tent maker make tents that we could work out of, to buying all the restaurant equipment to be able to cook for that many people in a mobile kitchen. And then today we were out actually buying the food, 50-pound bags of lentil beans and as many as we could fit in the van, and 50-pound bags of rice and beans and all of those things. So that's really been 2 days of those efforts. And tomorrow morning we'll get on the road, and it's about 700 miles, 600 miles here from Istanbul to there.
Brian, this is incredible. What an unbelievable undertaking. What made you and your colleagues say, I want to go over there and help? I mean, it's got to be so overwhelming to be there and daunting to think of how many people you'll be feeding.
Yeah, daunting is definitely the word there. But we've been helping over here in Turkey for a few years now, and we helped with a cafe over here called the Gospel Culture Cafe about 2 years ago, and we just have such a love for the country. So for us, when we heard of the disaster, that was our immediate thought is, how do we get over here and how do we do it? My wife and I started our nonprofit Give Hope during the pandemic, and it was for food insecurities. And there's not many more places in the world right now that are having food insecurities as bad as they are in some of these towns. And we're hearing about some scary things that are taking place, because when people are desperate and they can't feed their families, what links would you go to feed your family? So we're just kind of getting our heads around what that looks like. And for us, it's just go feed as many people as we can for as often as we can.
When you talk about just the desperation, as you talk to people, what are they saying? And it's just got to be so overwhelming for them, everything that their countries are going through.
Yeah, that's the one word we just keep hearing, is that just complete desperation, because so much is going into rescue efforts and all of this stuff just to get 7,000 buildings right now is what we're hearing that fell. So many of those resources are just going to that for life-saving measures and trying to get to family members. So the food and sleeping outside, and it's winter here. It's just like it is in Minnesota. So people are looking for blankets and clothing. And yesterday we were at sporting goods store after sporting goods store, and there's no tents left. There's no sleeping bags left. And we're 700 miles away.
What can people do to help? Because not everyone is like you and can hop on a plane to Turkey and really help boots on the ground. What can people here in Minnesota and the region do to help you in your effort?
Yeah, I think there's so many resources, Convoy of Hope and different organizations that are here, boots on the ground, and that are trying to feed folks. And then our nonprofit is called GiveHopeMN.org, and we're trying to raise resources as well to be able to build a long-term mobile food kitchen. So our goal isn't, if we leave in 10 days, that this stops feeding people. This is going to be months and months, if not a year, of trying to feed folks. So we're trying to build a kitchen that can be long-term sustainable. We have our cafe here out of Istanbul that is going to be trying to bring in people every week and switching out the teams that are feeding people. So our goal is to have a long-term kitchen here and be able to fund that and give them the resources that they're going to need to continue long-term. So if anybody wants to walk on this journey with us, you can make donations at that GiveHopeMN.org.
Oh, Brian, thank you so much for everything you do, and good luck. Please keep in touch with us. We'll check back with you. We appreciate everything you and others are doing to help the people over there.